Joining us this evening is author Susan Pewter, a lifelong Jersey girl, a resident of Barnegat. She's a graduate of the Trenton State College and a retired technology specialist from a major financial services company in New York City. Susan's a dedicated environmentalist who supports preservation of open lands and wildlife. And as an avid birder, she started the Southern Ocean Birding Group located in Tuckerton Seaport in Tuckerton, New Jersey. And she's a member of the New Jersey Audubon Society. New Jersey Birds and Beyond is her first published book. Susan has been a serious nature and wildlife photographer for over 30 years and is a field contributor, to Nature Photography magazine. So thank you for joining us this evening and sharing your expertise with us. And we look forward to our program. I will hand it to you.
Welcome, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. I hope everybody can hear me. The slideshow going, and hopefully that some people who weren't able to be, we were signed up for the program back in July when we had the technical difficulties. I hope you're able to join us again tonight. Some of this stuff will, let's see. Some of it might be a little repetitive if you were at some of the other programs, because this was supposed to be the kickoff for it. But hopefully there'll be some new information that everybody will enjoy learning. So this is Birding 101, Essentials for Becoming a Bird Watcher. Let's see. These are two oyster catchers that are nesting probably down in Cape May. Let's see, here we go. This is a little bit about myself. I'm founder and president of Southern Ocean Birding Group. I'm a board member of the Friends of Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge, which is located down in Oceanville, but extends all the way up to Brick. Volunteer master naturalist there. I'm also instructor for Stockton University Continuing Education. I'm a presenter and judge for New Jersey Federation of Camera Clubs, a field contributor to Nature Photographer magazine. I have an article that's in the latest edition. I'm the author of New Jersey Birds and Beyond, which you can see the cover there. And if anybody's interested in purchasing this, what I consider a beautiful coffee table book, you can go to my website and you can purchase it from there. And again, my website is eaglecreekphotos.com. So let's get started. What we're going to learn today in this program is how birds evolved, what makes a bird, how to look at birds, why birds are important to us, feeders and seed, and dangers and protections for our feathered friends. So let's start off first, and all these photographs are mine except this one. Archaeopteryx was possibly the first dinosaur bird, and it was about 150 million years ago. It was not there in the Jurassic period. First fossils were discovered in Germany over 150 years ago. They're still finding new fossils, especially in the Gobi and parts of China. So there's probably even older ones that have not yet been identified. It's about the size of a raven. It had flight feathers and a tail, and it could probably fly short distances. And the most primitive birds disappeared after the asteroid extinction 66 million years ago. And about 5% of birds or bird dinosaurs survived from that. And all the birds today are descendants from those few survivors from 66 million years ago. There's over 10,000 bird species in the world, and over 900 can be found in North America. 10,000 is probably a low number because they keep discovering new species, and especially the eastern rainforests, like in Indonesia, Java, Borneo, that areas. Also probably in Brazil and the Amazon. Birds are the only land animal species that live on all 7 continents, because we have penguins that live down in Antarctica. So why bird watch? Why watch birds? Almost 60 million bird watchers in the US now. Why? Well, the numbers increased substantially because of lockdown and people being stuck in their homes for the past year and a half. And it turns out to be a relatively inexpensive hobby. It's also a great reason to spend time outdoors and get some exercise, both physically and mentally. Bird watching is pretty easy and a convenient activity. It can be entertaining. It's like having your own Animal Planet show right in your backyard. I spent all last fall and winter watching birds at my feeders, just sitting in my sunroom. It can be very relaxing. It can relieve you of stresses of daily life. It can also sharpen your sight and hearing skills. I can't say that it has happened to my hearing skills because I'm deaf in one ear. And as you get older, those high-pitched sounds that birds make are harder for me to hear. So I go with people who are young and can hear them. Birding is an outdoor social event. Even though we want to make sure everybody's vaccinated. You can meet others that share your hobby and you make lifelong friends. Most of my friends that I have here since I moved down here are people that I met through my birding group. And it helps to protect the environment and save species by getting involved with organizations or just preserving, supporting preserves or refuges or local parks in your neighborhood. So where to start? So here's the birder who has everything, right? You need a good pair of binoculars, and that's essential. Field guides are imperative to help you with identification of birds. So this person has one. Don't get overwhelmed as many birds look alike, especially sparrows and some sandpipers are very difficult, I find, telling them apart. Field guides have all the families of species in the same basic order. So if you get a Peterson, it's going to be basically the same order as a Sibley's, as a National Geographic. You see that person, let's go back there for a second. You see they also have a scope. You have to be a more dedicated person to have a scope. And I have one, but I rarely use it, but we'll get more into scopes in a moment. So we have field guides. Let me move this thing. This is in my way, so I'm going to hide that. Field guides are essential to have. Sibley's is the most popular one right now. Roger Torrey Peterson's was the first one to come out with a handy guide that was easy for people to use. Stokes is a field guide for birders. They have photographs. Peterson's and Sibley's and National Geographic have drawings. I mean, they're beautiful drawings, but sometimes you don't see birds in their most perfect condition. So sometimes it's harder to tell with a perfect drawing. I like the Stokes, but I have also Sibley's. I have the National Geographic. A Shorebird guide is great if you live at the shore, and it's a whole book just devoted to shorebirds. The Guide to Bird Finding in New Jersey is by William Boyle, and that is a great book if you were looking for birds, you want to know where to go, when to go, get directions, and what birds you might see there at the time. So that's another great book to have in your collection. Field guides. They provide information on families and species. They give the bird topography, and each bird, if you took my bird identification class, there's different parts of the body that give you hints of what you might be seeing. Physical description of the bird, they have a picture of the bird, whether it be a photograph or a drawing, and they usually have them in, juvenile, adult, male, female. So they give you a good variety of views that you can see of a bird in different phases of its life. It also has the habitat and food sources. That's also very important. And it has regional maps. We're not going to see a woodhouse jay, scrub jay here in New Jersey, because that is a Midwest or a Western bird. So knowing that where a bird is located or where it can usually be found is very important. So here's the Sibley's. This is parts of a Sibley's guide. It gives you diurnal raptors, which mean they fly during the day, diurnal as opposed to nocturnal. It gives a listing of what raptors you might see. This is the bird topography. It gives you the different bird parts and wings and color, covert feathers. Key to the range map would be winter, summer, spring, year round, or just migratory. For example, here's a peregrine. You have a juvenile peregrine, an adult peregrine, first year peregrine, and sometimes they have regional variations, especially a bird like the red-tailed hawk has multiple variations depending on where the region is. And here's the map showing you where they are at what time of year. So the field guide is just full of information. Just a brief overview of body parts that we might be talking about: the bill, the maxilla, and the mandible, the crown, the nape, the back, the wing, rump. Rump is important if you're looking at like a yellow rump warbler. The tail, some tails are long, some are short, some are have a wedge shape, some are flat. Flanks, belly, sides, breast, throat. So those are the main parts of a bird. This is a water thrush. You can see it has an eyebrow, it has a speckled breast, those kind of things. There's a variety of apps and pocket guides that you can use if you don't want to carry around a field guide, which can be rather large sometimes with you. I keep some of the stuff in my car, like these pocket guides that we sell at with my birding group. Shorebirds in North America. There's raptors, warblers, waterfowl. There's also owls. There's another one. If you might see our table, we will be at the decoy show down at Tipseaman the end of September, and we will also have a table at the Pinelands Jamboree at Wells Mills. So if you come by our table, we will have these pocket field guides for you to purchase if you'd like. Apps would be eBird, a Merlin Bird ID by Cornell, and both of these are run by Cornell, the eBird and Merlin. Audubon Birds, and allaboutbirds.org. So these are some apps that you can get, some you can put on your phone. And one of the best ones is Merlin. This is an ID that you can, bird ID that you can put on your phone. It helps you identify birds with ease. You can get personalized results of birds that you might expect to see at a time or a different location. And they have photos and sounds and maps and ID tips for 80,000 bird photos. Now, that doesn't mean there's 80,000 birds. There's only a little over 10,000, but they have them juvenile, adult, variation, male, female. So there could be 8 photos for each of those birds, 7 or 8 photos. Merlin is the most fully featured and global bird app available, and the only one enabling both sound and photo identification powered by artificial intelligence. Merlin offers 4 fun ways to identify birds. It can do it by sound, by photo, by answering 5 questions about a bird you saw, or by exploring a list of birds that you might expect to see where you are located. Another thing that Cornell runs is eBird. This is an online database of bird observations providing scientists, researchers, and amateur naturalists with real-time data about bird distribution and abundance. And what we do is we have an eBird listing, and if we go someplace birding, like if I go to Forsyth, I would plug in, make a listing of the birds I saw, the number of birds I saw, when I saw them, what time, and I become a citizen scientist that helps Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology collect some of this data. So there's multiple ways that we can be scientists, citizen scientists, and help out on this stuff. But Merlin is great because you can get packages that you can download. Say you're going to be in Florida, so you can get the southeast birds that you might find in the southeast. I'm going out west next week, so I'm going to get the Rocky Mountain, where they also have them for different countries of the world. So in case you don't want to buy a field guide for birding, say Belize or Costa Rica, you can just use Merlin as your field guide. And if you can't see it, but you can hear the bird, you can put it up, record the sound, and it'll give you either a suggestion of what bird it might be or a group of birds that it might be. So it's a really great app, and I encourage you all to put them on your cell phones. So into binoculars and scopes. Well, binoculars are essential unless you have vision like Superman. Binoculars are essential for bird watching. And the prices can range from $100 to over $2,000. What most people recommend, and I recommend because this is what I use mostly, is the Nikon Monarchs is a good beginning binocular at 8 by 42. And we'll talk about what those numbers mean. It's a good range. You can probably get them for like $300 to $400. So I find it really good. I don't want to spend $1,000 or $2,000 for binoculars. But some people do, and a lot of people do, and they have really great glass. But for a good beginning binocular, I would recommend the Nikon Monarchs. Scopes are great for mostly stationary birds and can give the viewer a super close-up view of the bird. More serious birders get them, buy them, and the ranges from a few $100s to thousands of dollars for a good scope. We did a field trip last week to Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge, and because somebody had a super duper scope, we were able to see some wood ducks, which were way out. You couldn't see them with the naked eye. I could barely see them with my binoculars, but with the scope, I got a really good views of them. Same with some blue-winged teal. So they're good to have. What it's good to do is get in a birding group, and then somebody else will have a scope and you can look through theirs instead of making the purchase yourself. So what do the numbers mean on binoculars? The first number, we're talking about 8 by 42. The first number is the magnification or zoom or power. So that'd be 8 power. And the second number is the diameter of the lens. For example, 8 by 42 lens will have 10 times magnification and a 42 millimeter lens. The size of the lens is how much light comes in to your binoculars. You can get shorter than 42, but then you don't have as much light that you're looking at. You can get larger. I think it goes up to 50. I find them a little bit unwieldy. 10 by 42s are good. 8 by 42s are what most birders have. Ideal magnification, we recommend to use binoculars with either 8 power or 10 magnification. You'll be then able to enjoy a crisp, stable image and see your subjects at excellent detail from both near and far. What's the best lens size? 42 millimeter can gather in more light and therefore produce brighter images. So if you have questions about that, I'll try to answer. I'm not an expert, but this is basically what we use. Scopes. This is a picture of a scope. This is probably an expensive one. It's good for digiscoping. If you want to put your cell phone up to the eyepiece, you can sometimes get some really great pictures. I think it works better with Apple than it does with my camera, my phone. The benefits of digiscoping is combining a smartphone or a GoPro or a tablet camera with a powerful scope, and you can capture the images that are inaccessible from a short distance. Nature photographers use digiscoping to capture images of skittish or dangerous animals that are from a safe area. Most birds are not going to attack us, but if you're looking at tigers or bears, I'm going to be seeing bears next week, hopefully. Digiscoping may be useful in taking photographs for specific landscape scenes from an overlook. And birders commonly use scope camera combinations for magnifications of 20 times or 80 times. So digiscoping can capture images beyond the reach of normal digital cameras that zoom with clarity and focus. There are smartphone adapters such as the Nexi Z by Celestron, and I have that for my telescope, and I have yet to use it, but I have it. So what does it take to be a bird? Okay, we have an angry looking bluebird here. Usually this is a participatory part of the thing, but since I can't hear you, I will tell you. It's feathers, wings, a beak or a bill, and flight. So feathers. Now they're saying that many dinosaurs developed feathers for warmth. Even T-Rex now, scientists believe, had feathers. So here's another picture I did not take. I was not around then. We're finding them in the fossils. So what are feathers used for? Well, they're used for temperature regulation. A bird's feathers play an important part in keeping the body at the right body temperature. It's like putting a coat on or fur like what a mammal would have. It's protection. The feathers protect the body part from scrapes and bumps. Waterproofing. Bird skin is almost entirely covered with feathers. Not only do feathers help keep the bird warm, but they also provide waterproofing. Some birds more than others. Now you might see cormorants sitting out there with their wings spread and they're drying their wings. Now they don't have as much oil in their feathers as, say, diving ducks do, like Harlequin ducks or something. So they have to sit out and dry their wings after they've been doing some fishing. They use it also for communication and display. Bird feathers are used for males, especially use their colorful plumage to attract mates. And camouflage, and this is mostly for the females. The plumage of many birds provides excellent camouflage. Both predators and prey need to remain hidden for different reasons. So females are usually not as brightly plumed as the males are of many species, like cardinals or bluebirds or blue jays, I think, are both the same. Tanagers, because the females are sitting on the nest and they can't be brightly colored because then predators be easy to find the nest and kill the chicks. And they also get special sensory input from feathers called a phyloplume, which collects information such as how the wind is moving over a bird's body. If you ever go out on a windy day, and we had a couple of them recently, to the ocean or near any water, you might see some gulls or some sandpipers sitting, and they're always facing the wind. So that's, they know when they take off, they got to go fly into the wind so they can get lift. So they get some of that information from their feathers. And they also use some of their feathers for nesting materials to insulate their nests. A prime example of that would be eiders. You heard of eider down, where they use the eider down to insulate their nests, especially if they're nesting up in the Arctic. So here's feather types and locations on a perching bird. Some birds will have a bristle coming out from near their beak. They have body contour feathers. They have downy feathers that are mixed among the contour feathers. So the downies are a little underneath their flight feathers. They have primary, secondaries, tertiaries. Feathers are attached to the wing bones and they use them for flight. We have an after shaft. I don't know if you've ever picked up a feather that you might have found on the road, on a path or something. You'll find that the feathers all, if you push them, they all sort of lock into each other. And that's because they have a vein and a barb on there and hooks that keeps the feather nice and smooth. Bird beaks. Bird beaks, or the bills, are different shaped and they're used for different food that they eat. So quickly go through this. Crows eat almost anything. They can eat carrion, they can eat live animals, they can eat seed, they can eat garbage. So they have a very large, thick bill, the sole purpose. A conical bill, such as this for a cardinal, is a seed eating. So they have to have a bill that's strong enough to crack open seeds. The needle would be our beautiful little hummingbirds, my favorite, because they need to stick that in and get nectar out of flowers and feeders. Crossbills. We did have some crossbills here last winter, and they have actually a crossbill, and they use that for eating coniferous seeds. They open up the pine cone seeds with their bills and then get the seed out from the pine cone. Insect catching would be our warblers, our vireos, flycatchers. They all have more of a delicate, smaller bill because they use it for catching insects. We don't have toucans in New Jersey, but they're fruit eating, so they have a very large bill to eat large mangoes and bananas and whatever else might be in the tropics. Dipping netting. This is our pelican. So this is a white pelican. We don't have as many of those that come. We might get one or two during a year, but we do have the brown pelicans in there. They can be seen off of all our beaches, especially like Long Beach Island. Chiseling would be our woodpeckers. They have a very strong bill and then a very strong skull, very bony up here to protect their brains from when they chisel into trees. Raptors have a hooked bill because they use it to tear apart their food. Vultures have no feathers on their head because they put their heads in places where they don't want to get blood and guts and everything on their head, so they wouldn't be able to clean it. So they have no feathers. These kind of, we don't have flamingos in our area. And spatulated, which is our ducks, have a spatulated bill, and they dabble in water. So either they're diving ducks or they're dabbling ducks. So their bills decide what kind of food they eat. Wings, all right, so all birds have wings, even if they don't fly. Wings enable a bird to fly. Wings have different wing shapes for different styles of flying. So here's a gadwall taking off. A wing type, which is fast and zooming. They have a very pointed wing. It's good for falcons. The falcons try to eat birds. So they have a very more aerodynamic looking wing. This wing type is sort of big and swoopy, and it takes off and they circle, and this would be our hawks and eagles and vultures. They soaring birds. These are very elongated wings, good for cruising efficiently, and they would be gulls, albatrosses, which we don't have, and airplanes, of course. Flappy, and they dart around your yard, would be like sparrows and robins. And triangular, which is breaks the windows when flying fast. It's supersonic, or really scary falcons, like a peregrine. Wings are basically front legs covered in feathers, but unlike front legs of other animals, they don't support the body weight of the bird when on the ground. So here's a bunch of snow geese down at Forsyth. Amazingly enough, they can fly in large flocks like that, and they don't touch each other while they're flying. Amazing. Here are a couple of samples of wings. One is big. This is an osprey over here, who's going to be catching fish with their talons. This is a puffin, which catches fish with its bill, this little Harlequin-esque clown bill. They'll catch fish when they're swimming, and then they dive a bit into the water to get their fish. So we have flights, wings. The shape of the wing is important for producing lift. Gliding, when a bird is gliding, it doesn't have to do any work. So that's our hawks and the hawks and Vultures, eagles, they do a lot of gliding. So they cover large distances. And then when they're gliding in the thermal, they're saving energy by doing it with the gliding. Soaring, flights of special kind of glide in which the bird flies in a rising air current. And those air currents are called kettles. And they might get into a kettle and with the air current, and they'll glide over to another, and that gives them sort of lift. They can get up higher, and then they can move on to the next kettle that's forming and the rising air current. Flapping, birds' wings flap with up and down motion. This propels them forward. So a little bit of different, I've seen, like sometimes when goldfinches are flying, it's hard to see them, but I can hear them and I see them doing this loopy flight. And then I always know it's goldfinch. I guess house finches would also do the same kind of thing. And woodpecker is very similar, except they flap on the downbeat, whereas they glide. It's almost very, very similar. They don't go as high as a finch might because they're smaller birds. Redtails, turkey vultures, bald eagles sort of fly in a straight, keep their wings straight. Turkey vultures are a little bit more dihedral. It's more of a V shape than a black vulture, is more straight across. And I think the other one was a northern harrier, which is a little bit more V shaped too. So do all birds fly? So here we have flying. Here's a great blue heron in flight. Here's a northern shoveler in flight, giving us a sample of the beautiful colors that he has on his wings. This is a winter bird. Will be coming in probably the next month or two. October, they usually start migrating down. Here are a pair of European storks. It looks like a ballet, but the one on top was keeping this guy away from his nest. So they were sort of like an aerial battle going on. This is a stilt. And you can see how long his legs are, extending way back past whatever tail he might have. A harrier flying. This is a gray ghost, northern harrier, but you can see he still has the white rump. And this is a juvenile red-shouldered hawk coming in for a landing. You can see the red on his shoulders. So these are some flightless birds from all over the world. I'll give you a moment to think if you can name all of those. I would think a couple of them are pretty easy. And the guy from Australia, if you watch all those crazy commercials from Liberty Mutual, you'll know what his name is. And a lot of continents have, North America and South America does not have, South America does. North America does not have any flightless birds. Because there's no penguins up here. Penguins are only in the Southern Hemisphere. All right, so let's see what these birds are. Right, they have the cassowary, that's in Australia too. The ostrich is in Africa. The rhea is South America's only non-flying bird. Penguins are in Antarctica, kiwis in New Zealand, and the emu, which is on that ridiculous ad that I'm so sick of those ads. And then we have an angry bird. So other features of birds, they lay eggs like reptiles. They're warm-blooded like mammals. They have hollow bones, which they would need because they can't be too heavy to have flight. And they have a wishbone, which is up near where your collarbone would be, because that's where the flight muscles are attached to the sternum. So here's a yellow crowned night heron with eggs, and then with the chicks, and they're looking very dinosaurish, if you ask me, when they're little. So different sizes and shapes. If you're trying to identify a bird, the 3 species we normally use to identify a size would be like a house sparrow, which is an invasive bird anyway, robin, and then a large crow. So you have a small, medium, and large. And in between that, we can get some sort of semblance of what size the bird we're looking at is. So an American goldfinch is probably around the same size as a house sparrow. An evening grosbeak has a shorter tail, has a forked tail. It's probably around the same size as an American robin, maybe slightly smaller in body size. Using those same three birds, we look at a cedar waxwing. So cedar waxwing is going to be larger than a house sparrow, but not quite as large as the robin. And then we have a blue jay, which is larger than a robin, but not quite the size as a American crow. And finally, another common bird is the Downy Woodpecker. And that's a pretty small bird, probably around the same size as a house sparrow. But we have a Pileated Woodpecker, which is bigger than a robin. And it's basically one of the larger woodpeckers we have in North America. And it's not quite the same size as a crow because it's not as heavy in the chest and body, but the body length is probably around the same size as a crow. So why is migration important for birds? Well, the birding landscape changes during the year due to migration. Right now, the fall migration started in probably the beginning of July, with some birds coming down from the Arctic and the tundra coming down now. And it's probably now until about beginning of maybe mid-October. That's when it's in full swing around here in New Jersey. The migration occurs throughout the year, not just in spring and fall. As I said, you got to think of fall migration, but really start in summer. There are different classes of migration patterns. We covered this when we talked about spring migration. There's short distance migrants, which might be blue jays, some sparrow species. We have neotropical long distance migrants. There are songbirds, warblers, vireos. Some flycatchers will not go down to the tropics, but they will go south because there's no insects here. You know, it depends. Most birds migrate because there's no food. What they normally eat is leaves. You know, and if you're an insect eater, you're not going to be here in the winter because there's no insects for you to eat. Non-migratory species would probably like our cardinal. We have cardinals year long. We do have robins year long, but our robins will go south, whereas the robins we see in the winter are ones that have come down from the Maritimes and New England. So we have robins year round, but they're not the same robin. And there's migrant traps. This is an area when you're flying and you look down, you're looking for some place that's got shelter and food and maybe water that you need after you've been flying. You know, think of a migrant trap like a motel on I-95 when you're going to, you know, if you're driving down to Florida, you're going to stop at some place where you can rest, where you can get some food and, you know, have some safety at night. So some traps around here would be Central Park, Garrett Mountain, which is in Passaic County, I believe, or near Patterson. Cape May is a great one, especially during fall migration. I mean, now, beginning Labor Day and going on through like mid-October, Cape May is the place to be. And Sandy Hook is also a great place to be in the fall too. Though I don't go up there because it seems farther away, though probably mileage is probably around the same. Because different migrant species prefer different habitats, locations that might be good for birding in the summer might not be good in the winter, and vice versa. Cape May in the fall is much better than Cape May in the summer. Belle Plaine State Forest is great in the spring, but not so great in the fall. So there's different locations for different times. Okay, use this a moment to register and we'll move on to anything else. Again, if you have questions, I see there's some chat. So, spring and fall migration loops, not a single path. We have the blackpoll warblers. They might travel up along the Delaware River during the spring migration, but they'll come out along the coastline and migrate down along the coast in the fall. I see there's a bunch of questions, so maybe when I finish migration, we'll get to some of the questions before we get to the end. There's 4 different main flyways in the United States or North America. We're on the Atlantic flyway, and these are like a geographical sections that are divided up because of various barriers that prevent birds from possibly going out of their flyway. So we have the Atlantic flyway has the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, but also along here is the Appalachian Mountains. So that becomes a barrier because birds don't want to take the effort to go over large mountains or go out of their normal habitat. We have the Mississippi flyway, which goes from the Appalachians over to about the Mississippi River area. And that's those will go all the way up to Upper Canada. Central flyway is between the Mississippi Valley and the Rocky Mountains. And then we have the Pacific flyway is on the west side of the Rocky Mountains, all the way up into Alaska. So I know some of you saw this before, if you watched the migratory program. This is our ruby-throated hummingbird. This is mostly what we get in the east. This little guy is one of my favorites. I love hummingbirds. And if you see what their abundance is, and this will give you an idea of their migration that they do. So in the winter, they're down in Central America and Mexico. And then as spring starts to approach, you can see their abundance and distribution. And they're basically, they go into the Atlantic and the Mississippi flyways, central Mississippi flyway areas. They're not a West Coast bird. And they fly, not so much. Some of them might come down through Mexico, but a lot of ours on the Atlantic flyway will fly across the Gulf of Mexico. And they can do that in less than 48 hours. They do it nonstop because there's no place to stop. And what they do is their organs will shrink as they get using up more and more energy to get across. So this gives you an idea of the abundance. As you can see there, they basically split the country right in half. On the east side of the country, you will have these in breeding season, and they're basically non-existent in the west. New Jersey, again, is situated in the flyway. Bird migration, it's at its heights. New Jersey is basically halfway between the equator and the Arctic Circle. So we're in a perfect location, and that's why we get about 450 birds, which is almost half of what you can see in the US and Canada. We can find in New Jersey. We provide food and resting location for tens of thousands of birds during migration. And some of the best locations are Cape May, Sandy Hook, Garrett Mountain, Belle Plaine. Forsyth is always great. And the greenheads should be gone in another week or two. And if it's a breezy day, they're not bothersome at all. Delaware Bayshore is great in spring. And Ocean County Bays and shore areas are good almost all year round. So let me get a couple of questions here. Let's see.
I saw one question I saw was, what's the date for the Wells Mill event?
I'm going to tell you that in a second. I have my calendar here, and it's the 9th of October. The 9th of October. And the decoy show down in Tuckerton is the 25th and 26th of September. So Hopefully that information helps you. Robin, bird.
Other things were just comments.
Okay. Do birds mate while migrating? Not normally. They'll wait because they have to establish a nest. Sometimes the male will make the nest, like in ospreys. Other times the female makes the nest, like in, I want to say Baltimore Orioles. So they have to wait till they get established and have a food source and stuff before they will mate. Okay, good questions. All right, let's go to why birds are important. Well, they pollinate plants, especially things like hummingbirds or other birds that go and eat seeds. They're pollinators. One of our main pollinators are birds and insects. We don't have them. We don't have human beings living on the planet. So we do need those. Also some bats, species of bats will also pollinate. They do a seed dispersal, all right? They eat seeds or they knock seeds down from trees or plants or bushes, and they disperse the seeds. They're also rodent and insect controls. There's a lot of warblers or insect eaters, vireos, flycatchers, or hawks or raptors or rodent control. They'll eat mice and rats and voles and things like that. Vultures are nature's garbage disposal. I'm sure you've seen examples of that along the road. They're also indicators of environmental change. You know, when they say the canary in the coal mine, well, birds are environmental indicators. And we're seeing that these days because we're getting some species from the south, which we've never had before because of climate change. And one of them would be pelicans. Right now, we have about 30 pelicans that come up here. 30 years ago, there weren't any. Black vultures are another bird that's making its way north. So are Mississippi kites. So they're indicating of that, but they're also, their population declines are also indicators of environmental change, especially our grassland birds. Domestic birds, of course, chickens and turkeys provide us with food. And, you know, they're just beautiful and they enrich our lives. I mean, if you look at an eastern bluebird, a western bluebird, a mountain bluebird, tanagers, they're just painted bunting. It's just a variety of colors and they just make you feel good if you see a beautiful bird. So we're going to go through some birds we might see in our areas. Gray-crested flycatchers are a pretty common one in wooded areas, along with hermit thrushes. This is a barn swallow, and this is a nest on one of my neighbor's porches. They like the stucco, and there's 5 little ones in there, if you can see them. Another beautiful bird, a barn swallow. They'll be migrating out of here shortly. Some unusual birds we've had this year, Ipswich sparrows. We've had quite a few of them down at Barnegat Inlet this winter, especially in March. We saw at least 6 or 7 of them. That's the most I've ever seen since I've been birding around here. There are subspecies of Savannah sparrows. We had a cattle egret at Barnegat at Meadow Edge Park earlier this year. That's a southern bird, again, making inroads to northern parts of the country. A Townsend Warbler. This is a West Coast bird. You know, you could more see this in Washington State or Oregon. And it was at Forsyth this winter around the beginning of the year for about a week or 2. So that was a real, I think some birds have been coming over from the West Coast area because of the fires too, might be moving the location of some birds more east. Some other ones that you might see in your yard would be a brown thrasher. These are in woodlands, a wood thrush, a little bit harder to find than a hermit thrush. Purple martins are probably gone by now. If you had houses, they gather around mid-August and they head to Brazil. Tree swallows are now starting to get into large flocks. And they will start moving out probably in September and October. I was down in Cape May once, and there must have been thousands of tree swallows there. And it was like we're Tippy Hedren or something, walking around with all these swallows just encircling us. Yellow warblers, they're on the move now. They'll be migrating through. White-breasted nuthatches, we have them year-round, but we see them more in the fall and winter. Northern mockingbird is a common bird we have year-round in our area. They're non-migratory. Eastern phoebe, a little flycatcher, they're a migratory bird, and they will be leaving shortly, probably next month or so. A northern bobwhite, more of a rare bird. They're doing some programs now to reestablish them. They're a quail. They're a small quail. There happened to be one in Waretown for a while that was quite friendly, so we figured it was raised by humans, but they are trying to establish a little colony there. Laughing gulls, these are some chicks that we saw down in Cape May area on a boat ride that we took. So that I thought that was cute. They are cute when they're little, and they're not so much when they come and try to steal your pizza from you. Northern cardinals, we have them year round. You can see the difference in the male, which is more brightly colored than the female because she has to sit on the eggs. Some winter birds that are will be coming in December would be the Harlequin Duck. You can see them at Barnegat Light. One of the most beautiful birds that we have in North America. Harlequin and I think wood ducks are the most pretty ducks that we have. This is a long-tailed duck below it. I think there's some labels coming up. It's a long-tailed duck. You can see them along the coastal in the winter. Common eiders. These are a pair, and there's quite a few, a small flock that's down at Barnegat Inlet. And once in a while, they come along the concrete walkway, which these two did, which makes it easier because I don't like going out on the rocks. So you can see the difference in the male and what a pretty beautiful coloration they have. And the females are very dull, very brown. And we had this special visitor, which I think is still there at Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge. This is a roseate spoonbill. And you can see this has a little bit of a cut in his chip in his bill, but he has been around for like 3 or 4 weeks now. And if you go down to the dog leg, if you know where that is on the North Dike, you might have a good chance of seeing a roseate spoonbill. Again, there's been a couple of them in the area this spring and summer, or this summer, and these are a southern bird. So you can see that climate change is allowing some of these southern birds to come up and visit with us. That was a special visitor. These are winter birds. We would have northern shoveler. Looks like a mallard almost. It's got a green head, this really bright yellow eye, but it has this very large spatulated bill. You can't miss it. And they have a little bit blue, this chestnut. Pintail, another lovely winter duck. Chocolate head, the white goes up. Looks like almost like an ice cream cone. Summer birds. Sometimes a few of them might stay around here in the winter if it doesn't get too cold. Worcester Catchers, very noticeable, a great treat to find. They usually nest on the beaches. They have that red eye ring. Some young egrets that you can see if you go down to the Ocean City Rookery, which is on the bridge, the 9th Street Bridge, exit 30. There's a rookery there if you stop at the visitor center. Most of them should be gone by now, but they might be a couple of youngsters still hanging out there. The best time to go is like May, June, even July, early July is a good time to go because there's all sorts of herons and egrets nesting there. Also ibises. We have white ibises nesting there along. There's another southern bird moving up north, and glossy ibis. And here's a young oyster catcher chick. Black skimmers are still around. They will be moving out, probably migrating in, let's say October sometime. Another fun bird to see along our waterways. and the American woodcock. You have more chance of seeing this in the spring. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen their movement, but I do have a video that a friend of mine loaned me. So this, you gotta watch how they move. It's really, really a fun thing. They're doing this very odd movement because they're trying to, with their feet, feel if there's any worms or grubs or anything underneath. But they do this little body dance, which is very unique and very much fun to watch. You know, the head doesn't move, but the whole body is. And I do a little imitation of this if we could see it live, but it's your loss because we can't get to see live. But there they are. He's doing his little dance. Hopefully that brings a smile to your face because it's really, really fun to watch.
We had a question that said, are bird bindings still a thing that is done?
Bird what?
Bird bindings?
Oh, I mean like banding them?
Yes, I guess that's what they mean.
Yes, they still band birds. They do, most of the ospreys are banded. They also are banding semi-palmated sandpipers, I think. I know ospreys they band some eagles. They band oyster catchers. So a lot of species, especially if they're threatened or endangered, they will be banding the chicks. They do banding down at Cape May for raptors. Before COVID, you could see they would bring them over to the near the Hawk Watch there. Where'd I go? Where'd it go? Okay, so I had Peregrine Falcons. Very similar, they're larger species than the accipiters with a merlin. So you might confuse the two, but the peregrine has a much darker helmet looking thing because they fly so fast. These are some birds that you can see in New Jersey. Red-shouldered hawks, we usually get more of them during the winter. Sharpshins are here all year round. And they go after those in Coopers will go after your bird feeders because they eat solely birds. Bald eagle and the northern harrier. All right, so feeders and seed. The hopper bird feeder, also called the birdhouse feeder, works like that. This is a typical feeder that holds bird seed and dispenses it into a tray at the bottom of the hopper. As the bird consumes the seed, it replenishes the bottom. Quick guide of some seed types would be sunflower and safflower. A Niger seed and thistle are good for finches like that. Mealworms, the bluebirds love mealworms. And in the winter, I put up suet feeders, and I usually get a whole variety of different kinds of birds that come to the suet feeders. You can also use shell to crack corn and peanuts. Peanuts will get mostly blue jays. And for more information, more detailed information, I would go to feederwatch.org, and that's again part of Cornell. And they're almost the world expert on everything birding. So if you want more information about different types of feeder and seed, go to feederwatch.org. Threats and dangers to birds. Well, of course, there's lack of food or habitat, and habitat is a lot of grassland birds are losing habitat like crazy. Climate change is a big factor, and because it also starts fires, it causes droughts. If there's droughts, there's nothing for them to eat. Heavy rains like we had the past few days, flooding, climate change also for nesting birds that are on beaches. When we get ultra high tides, it washes away their nests. So that's a big factor in dangers to birds. Other predators or other birds, mammals, reptiles, even some insects. We have a Chinese praying mantis that can even take a hummingbird if it gets close enough. They're invasive. House cats kill billions of birds a year. So if you have a house cat, please keep it inside. And as I say that, my cat walked into the office. Bad weather, that's also related to climate change. Tall buildings, now you might see that there's an effort going on in Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, to turn out the lights at night in high office buildings, because a lot of birds are attracted to light and they fly into the windows and die. You'll also know that Audubon is part of the 9/11, when they have the two lights that go up at night. They are checking on radar for birds that are starting to come through, because it's the migration time. If they see a large swath of birds coming in on the radar, they turn the lights off for about 20 minutes for the birds to pass and not get caught up in those lights. And then they get disorientated and they crash into buildings. Cell towers and wind turbines. Again, a lot of wind turbines, especially in the West, are killing a lot of golden eagles. You probably heard about this, was in the news a lot 2 years ago. About 3 billion birds have gone missing in the US and Canada since 1970. That's a lot of birds. And you can see how the numbers have crashed over the past 50 years. Some birds that have been suffering the most, eastern forest birds, not so much, only 17% decrease. Arctic tundra birds, that's a snow bunting there. They've lost 23% of their population. Western forest birds, a stellar jay. Boreal forest birds, that's a evening grosbeak. Shorebirds, 37% down, but the biggest ones have been grassland birds, and their numbers have really crashed with over 50% decrease. That's because grasslands are being used for housing, putting up these humongous warehouses for Amazon and other distributors. They buy up farms and they put up big old buildings, and birds are missing their food. This is mortality. This is both Canada and the US. Cats are estimated to kill over 2 billion birds annually in the US. Chemicals, agricultural chemicals, insecticides, pesticides. If they kill off the insects, there's nothing for insect eaters to eat. Collisions with buildings, towers, cars, cell towers, power lines. These are all items that are responsible for some of these, the high mortality rates in our country. So where to see birds, all right? And that's winter. The best places would be Barnegat Light, Barnegat Bay, Cedar Run Dock Road is pretty good. Great Bay Boulevard is very good. Island Beach State Park is very good in the winter and spring, and even in the fall. Point Pleasant Beach is good. They had some nesting least terns and skimmers and stuff on the beach, but also Lake of the Lilies is a great place to go. Spring, again, Great Bay Boulevard, Wells Mills County Park, Cloverdale County Park, Caddis Island, in Tom's River, Double Trouble in Bayville, Cedar Bonnet Island, which is on the causeway going over to LBI, and that's part of Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge, and that's probably pretty good 3 seasons. In the summer you might have greenhead problems depending on the wind, but fall, winter, and spring are really great there. Summer, Wells Mills, Cloverdale, Great Bay, Barnegat Bay. There's been some interesting stuff up at Gull Island in Manasquan Inlet. Has been really good this year. And fall would be Cloverdale again. These are just local areas: Wells Mills, Island Beach State Park, Barnegat Bay, Cedar Bonnet Island. So you can see there's lots of places to go year round in our county. This is a map that the Southern Ocean Birding Group has put out with some of the best locations in Southern Ocean County. And this map is available at our website, and you can download it if you wish. We also have some of them available at when we have our tables set up at those events.
What is your, oh, there it is. Sorry.
There it is.
You jumped the gun.
Southern Ocean Birding Group. We're the only birding group in Ocean County. We meet first Thursday of every month. That's when we meet in person, which we have not done in 18 months. We're doing Zoom meetings until further notice, hopefully in November, but things are a little dicey these days, so we're not sure about that. Our next meeting is the second of September, and we're having a really great special program. It's Kevin Carlson, who's one of the top bird photographers in the country, is going to be doing a program on his new book and why bird families are important. And you can join us. There's a link at our Facebook page. That's Friends in Southern Ocean Birding Group. But if you just type in Southern Ocean Birding Group, it'll come up, and there's a link there to our Zoom meeting next week. We also do educational programs monthly. We have monthly field trips. We do the Tuckerton annual Christmas bird count. That's where we become citizen scientists. We do a community service project, cleaning up trash on Great Bay Boulevard in the spring. And we've been awarding mate scholarships, probably over $5,000 or $6,000 over the past several years to high school seniors going on to environmental programs in college. And that's our website. You really don't need the www. It's just southernoceanbirdinggroup.org. And you can find it there. So that's all, folks. Here's one of our winter visitors. That's always wonderful to see. We have snowy owls. These are juveniles, first-year owls come down here. And last year there was about 3 or 5 of them in the area. Usually Island Beach usually gets 1 or 2, and Holgate has some. I did see one at Forsyth down at Oceanville this past winter. So you always have to look out for when the snowy owls come in, because they're a wonderful bird to see. It's a winter bird. So I hope everybody learns something and goes out and starts birding.
Program. I wanted to thank you.
All right, so let me go back and see if there's any other questions.
I've been monitoring. I didn't see anything else that you didn't. Does anyone have any other questions that they'd like to type in?
Or they can we can unmute people if anybody has questions that way.
Let's see.
I'm going to stop sharing. Let me escape here. I'm going to stop sharing my. There we go. Sorry about that little hiccup.
You could type your name in if you want, and I could unmute you. Otherwise, I don't have a big feature to unmute everybody. Oh, I can mute all. Let's see if I can unmute all. It doesn't look that way.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody. The presentation was produced on PowerPoint. Yes, that's true.
So I just wanted to thank you, Sue, for sharing your expertise with us this evening. It was a great presentation, all of them. So as I said, so these programs will be available on the Ocean County Library YouTube channel in about 2 weeks. The other programs, I think there was a little glitch and they weren't uploaded yet. So they'll probably be uploaded at the same time. So this was the final program for our Birdwatching Essential series. This was the first, but we changed it to now, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. I definitely learned a lot. I saw one more question come in, which was, why do birds eat shells? And there's a possibly for calcium. Is
Yes.
it for calcium or?
It's for calcium. The females especially need shells, and sometimes I put out egg shells. If I boiled an egg or something, if you put some shells out, especially in the spring, the females might eat some of that because they need to build up calcium to produce their own eggs. So yeah, they'll eat shells because they need the calcium.
The question is, do we only feed birds if we have a bird feeder in the winter and fall, or is it all year round?
They don't usually see them too much in the summer because there's a lot of natural food, and they're busy feeding the young. Now they're starting to show again, and I know somebody in the past has had questions about the feeders. And what I just read today is that it's okay to put out bird feeders. They were talking about that eye disease that some of them had. I think they determined that it wasn't caused by the feeders. I can't tell you what the end result of that was, but I have read, I think it came out through something official like Fish and Wildlife or something else. It wasn't just somebody's text, or just putting out there. So I think it's rather official that if you want to put your feeders out, I usually don't put my feeders out until like September, October, because then they don't have a lot of the natural food because, there's not many seeds and the berries may be falling off and, so I help them out. But usually during the summer, they really don't need, plus you have to keep cleaning it out all the time. I don't, because of the heat. So I don't usually put feeders out during the summer. But come September, I'll probably start putting food out for them. So that's probably why I don't see them so much in the summer, because they're so busy. I mean, it takes a lot of energy feeding young, and some mature faster than others, and some do 2 clutches, which means they do 2 sets of kids. Bluebirds might do that, especially if the first one fails. So that's what they're spending most of their time doing, and they eat natural food. They'll get insects or berries, seeds. So there's a lot of natural food out there for them, because that's what they did before we showed up with feeders.
Okay. Good point. All right. Well, thank you again.
Is there another one that came
I think so. I think that was
Okay,
it.
I enjoyed the series. Thank you. Okay.
All right. Well, you enjoy your trip next week, and
Well, thank you.
we'll be in
Don't
touch.
get eaten by a bear. I'll be around.
Yeah, be careful. All right, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Support public libraries. Like, share, and subscribe for more great videos.